This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, as always, is Dave Oster.
Hey, everybody.
Today, we are going to be talking about Michael Porter Jr. and his injury. He's going to be out for the season. We're talking his draft stock and how it's going to affect the NBA draft. We're also going to be talking about Kyrie Irving for MVP. We also got lined up Kawhi Leonard returning to the Spurs and how that's going to affect the Spurs. But Dave, before we do that, we got to talk about our damp dudes, our soggy shooters, our wet boys for the week. We got two guys lined up. We have one repeat and one new member joining the club. Start us off, Dave.
All right, so the two-time joining the club, Ben Simmons. He is a two-time wet boy. And look, I want to give to, and I don't want to be a homer for the 76ers. You know I'm a big fan, but let's be honest, he deserves the credit he's getting. He played against Golden State and Utah in his last two games. He popped off against Golden State, almost getting a triple-double, 23, 8, and 12. I'm sorry, 23, 8, and 12 against Golden State. Play the best team in the league. And then, Utah, 27, 10, 2, 4 steals, though. I'm sorry, he's one of the most balanced young players in the league. He can do it all. And for a rookie, I know he's a second-year rookie technically, but the composure and the basketball IQ is off the charts for this kid.
And you bring, Ben Simmons' great game against the Warriors. He was fantastic, almost a triple-double.
Yep.
But they lost that game. And the reason they lost that game is because the Warriors just absolutely obliterated them in the third quarter. And that was mostly due to my wet boy, our first-time wet boy in Steph Curry. He popped off for 35 against the Philadelphia 76ers there. Shot 4 of 9 from 3, 11 of 22 from the field, 9 of 9 from the free throw line. I know Ricky loves that. But looking at the past two games against the 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets, popping off for 37 points per game, a steal and a half, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. He also got 42% from 3 and 54% from the field. Steph Curry, we know he's one of the best shooters in the league. You also got to look at the Warriors and this team with Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. Steph Curry, if you ask KD, he might say that Steph is still the leader of this team. KD might be the more natural scorer, probably might be the better all-around player, but Steph Curry, still two-time MVP. He's absolutely ridiculous. Probably the greatest shooter we've ever seen in the NBA. But anyways, tell us your wet boys of the week down in the comments below. Dave, clearly a two-timing whore here, picking Ben Simmons' choice. But anyways, Dave, let's move on now to Michael Porter Jr. and his draft stock in the NBA draft. We talked about him last week with the Chicago Bulls possibly looking at him to pick him up. But on Tuesday, Missouri announced that their freshman is going to miss the remainder of the college basketball season due to back problems. He's going to undergo back surgery. Ooh. He played a minute or 2 minutes in his college career, had a bucket, shoot 100%, shot 100% from the field. I can't talk today. Shot 100% from the field, but obviously did not play enough, at least in the college game, to see what his true fit was, how he was going to look out there. Really didn't get to see him against an okay Iowa State team. But looking at it, how much do you think this will affect Michael Porter Jr.'s draft stock?
I don't think there's going to be as much of a drop-off as we have seen in past cases like Harry Giles did, where he went from the unanimous number 1 out of high school to going 20 overall because of his multiple injuries. This is one injury. It's a back. The only concern I really had was that this injury actually occurred earlier, and it was misdiagnosed, which led to him playing on it more, which obviously complicates things. Yeah. But in all honesty, this is one of the most heavily scouted talents that we've seen in a long time. We've got videotape of him in college or in high school. You've got videotape of him at the under 18 FIBA tournament, which he popped off in and looked amazing. So I don't think the college time really is going to, him not playing in college isn't going to hurt. It's all about his recovery time, because I think they're estimating a 3 to 4 month downtime for him. That still gives him plenty of time to come back, get ready for workouts, for everything you need before the draft to prove that you're back to where you should be. I don't think he's going to drop out of the top 5.
Really?
Yeah, I think he's still a staple for the top of this draft.
Do you think it pushes him away from the number 1 pick, though? Because obviously, he's not going to be able to play. He's not going to be able to, show off what he had in college. Obviously, heavily recruited, like you mentioned. But, people were saying, and I was one of them, that he might be a number 1 overall pick. I thought he was probably the best player in this NBA draft. Obviously, need would come into it a bit, but looking at him, I thought he was probably the best athlete and with the highest potential in this draft. Do you still feel like he could possibly at least get the number 1 pick in the number 1 selection?
Yeah, I think there's still an outside sliver of hope, and that's really only if we see Doncic kind of waver a little bit in Euroball, which he hasn't done yet, but it's not saying it can't happen. The thing is like his development in college, we didn't really need to see a ton anyway. It was just, is he going to continue at his current level? Great. He's super worth it. It's not like he really needed to improve his play a ton in college to separate himself out. He was already, like you said, in that 1, 2, 3 discussion. Really, is Ayton going to overperform right now? Because he's looked like a monster at times, other times Butterfingers. And if either of Doncic or Ayton stumbles a little bit, and if he looks great coming off of this injury, I think he's right there in that discussion because of his top side. It's that upper potential. We're not worried about where they're at now. It's where they will be at their top potential.
And the thing with Porter, too, the thing that you wanted to see in college is obviously him get a more consistent shot out there. He's got a pretty decent stroke. It looks a little wonky, but it's not as bad as Lonzo Ball out there. And if he's able to hit that shot, then it's obviously going to be great in the minds of scouts. And you also want him to see a little bit of take more of a step, at least as a playmaker as well. But also the one thing with at least his college performance, you want to see him dominate out there because the one thing, talent, if you're able to dominate in the college game, you're able to at least dominate in high school, you're most likely going to be able to dominate at some point in your NBA career. But we haven't been able to see that in college. We saw, Ben Simmons at LSU dominate the whole league and the whole college game.
But he didn't take his team to the tournament, which is interesting.
Well, you look at Fultz as well. He wasn't able to take his team to the tournament as well. And Missouri was kind of a fringe team, at least to go to the tournament. So overall, Porter obviously going to take a hit. I feel like it's probably going to knock him out of the number one overall, kind of conversation, at least for a bit as well, because obviously, Ayton's going to be performing, Bagley's going to be performing, Doncic is obviously going to be out there and performing, and it's kind of going to take Porter out of the public eye. And now I don't think people are going to forget about him exactly, but when they are looking at tape and looking at stats, they're just going to worry how much he is going to be able to come back. And again, he is young right now. 19 years old, 18
He's
years
18,
old, 18 years old. He's obviously still young and obviously can still come back from this, but back problems at 18 is very worrisome because we've talked about guys with injuries before. Joel Embiid obviously injured in his college days, and he fell from possibly a number one overall pick to third overall. How much do you think the back injury might affect his growth and at least his top level? Do you feel like that might take away from his possible potential?
You were right with 19, by the way, but. No, I don't think...
We're terrible with math.
I mean, it's
not that we're just terrible. I look at 98, April 1st, 1998. It's just, I can't do the math in my head. I'm just stupid.
But the only concern is if it's going to be a reoccurring issue. And an injury like this, I don't foresee it coming, as a long-term chronic injury. Obviously, you're afraid of back injuries, you're afraid of foot, ankle, knee. Those are all critical pieces, but he's not a guy who is overwhelming in size. He's not 250, 260. It's not where there's going to be a ton of stress on his back. I don't foresee this being something that will cloud his future career. I think it's not the worst thing to happen to him because he can take this time off, rehab, and then he can work on his game. He doesn't have to concentrate on the ins and outs of college life. He doesn't have to concentrate on the college game, traveling so much. Mm-hmm. He can develop some of those individual skills. I know the one thing you said was as a playmaker, we want to watch him develop. That's the only area where you'll be concerned. I don't foresee him developing as a playmaker without being able to play with other people. Yeah. But the individual skills, I think he can come back just as sharp.
And one thing with Porter, too, that I just want to mention is that, if he does take a fall, someone's obviously going to have to step up and rise up above. Who do you think is going to benefit the most from Porter being out? Is it going to be Doncic, who plays a similar position and possibly could fit a need more, or do you think it's one of these guys like Ayton, Bagley? You look at Bamba. You think it's going to be one of these guys that take kind of a step up?
I honestly think it's probably Bagley's going to take the step up because a lot of people are criticizing his game and his lack of the ability to create his own shot, his poor shooting mechanics in general. And honestly, with him, it's not an issue of motor. Obviously, he is balls to walls all day. And athletic, but it's that well-rounded game. It's the ability to have some basketball IQ, some good court vision. Obviously, he's transitioning into a power forward, so he needs to muscle up. He's a guy who, raw, could transition very well to the NBA. I see him as the guy who's probably going to move up. I don't think Doncic is affected at all by Porter's injury. I think he's doing his own thing in Europe. He is
But why don't you
most
think he's
proven
effective?
talent.
Because they still play the same position. So
Roughly,
if there is a need, you don't think that Porter...
The difference is I already had Doncic marked above him.
But even for people who have Porter above him, like me, you don't think that if Doncic continues to perform and then Porter's dealing with an injury, you don't think that might flip for people? Or do you think that it doesn't matter, like the injury really doesn't matter to these people because they've seen enough of Porter, like you mentioned, and they've seen enough of Doncic?
I think the under-18 tournament really helped out Porter. Like, if he hadn't played in that tournament, and I know it's only a handful of games, but still, it's a handful of games against some of the top young talent in the world, which beats out the college game. No offense to college games, but like you have like world-class talent, then you have obviously college is right below that. So, in my opinion, I think you're either, and I don't want to be like divisive about this, but you either believe Doncic can be, a top talent in the NBA, or you're going along with no, he's not athletic enough, he's not dynamic enough, he's not a killer, he can't score at he can't take over games as well. I'm going for. I get it. Porter potentially can do all of those things. Doncic looks more polished right now. It's where do you see the potential at the top end? And I don't think this really. I'm at a wash. I don't think this affects my opinion of either one of these players.
And like you mentioned, Porter's obviously going to be able to be back for that May Combine. He's able to be working out then. Obviously, we had a similar kind of talks with OG Anunoby last year. We weren't sure if he was going to be able to work out. How was that going to affect his draft combine? And then he ended up trying out for teams, working out for them, and then people saw his talent, and that's why he went high on the draft. So obviously, we've seen guys before who've suffered major injuries. I mean, I think Anunoby tore his ACL.
Yeah, and that was a more severe injury.
Yeah. I mean, spinal surgery.
But it's
not easy.
It's not easy, but
again,
it's
3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
It's not that crazy of a return. But Porter can definitely make up for what he lost in the combine. Do you think, though, if he had a fantastic, kind of Ben Simmons-like college career, do you think that, if he popped off, do you think that he would have been for sure the number 1 overall pick because of his ceiling?
I do. I'm one of those guys who I like what he could do. I like the dynamicness of his position and where it's going to be in the NBA. Is we've gone to a wing-heavy league, and I think that he has all the natural talent to be an excellent wing, and he looked like he had a lot of the basketball talent to kind of take it to the next level. So when it comes to the only thing, and I just keep going back to it, is as long as he returns healthy. That's the big question. If there's any complications in the surgery, if there's any complications in his rehab, then obviously this all goes into question. But potential-wise, I had him higher than Bagley. And I know that's not consensus. I know, I honestly like him better than, Ayton, even before the season. Once I started to see what Ayton could do, I can see, they're very close as far as where they could be top-end talent-wise. But Porter, I think, because of his position, because of the way he played, I would have put him as the number 1 for potential.
One thing I want to bring up is on ESPN, obviously they've gotten rid of our boy, Chad Ford. They brought in the guys from Draft Express. And Giovanni, I think I'm saying his name right, said that at the start of the season, he was number 2 in their mock draft. Now he's going to fall mid-lottery. Do you think that's too much of an overreaction?
Yeah, I think that's a hardcore hot take.
He said that he can work his way up, but in the next mock draft, he's going to be in the mid-lottery. He could still work his way up when he gets closer and closer to the draft.
I mean, that's a joke. I'm sorry. You can hot take it all you want. I don't think that he can work his way back up while he's injured. There's no change in his status unless other people underperform, which happens. You always see rises and fallers throughout the college season. I just think that his talent, his potential, and his all-around package, even with the injuries, still warrants a top 5. It's kind of like Joel Embiid, where you had a big man with injuries, and he was the consensus 1 before the draft, went out with an injury, and
I don't know if he was consensus 1. I mean, he was going up against Wiggins and Parker. I mean, those two.
He was a dominant force in college.
Both those guys both played wing positions. Again, even in 2014, it wasn't like people were still looking for their big man to build around a franchise. Yeah. So, I mean, Wiggins and Parker, it wasn't like it was crazy that those guys went before Embiid.
I think it was more likely that Embiid, if he had not been injured, would have been the overall number 1. But regardless, it's how far will an injury make you afraid of somebody. And the thing is, too many people are short-sighted about injuries. If it's not a chronic injury, if it's not something that is likely to pop back up time and time again, you have to look at these kids, and they are kids, as 19-year-old talents who will develop in the next 5 to 8 years. You can't just be like, well, he's injured now, so let's go for somebody else. No, his top end is still higher then, and it might be marginally higher, but it's still higher than what I believe other teams have seen for players.
And the final thing I want to bring up, just because it is very recent and kind of topical, Markelle Fultz gets injured. They draft him, the 76ers do, and obviously he injured himself from after the college season to when he started playing in the NBA in the regular season. Obviously, now that he's been injured, we haven't seen him on the court. Do you think that, now with that injury, do you think the 76ers are kind of regretting their decision with some of these guys? And do you think that could possibly play out with Porter? I'm not saying that they should, but do you think that, this is possibly something that now looking at Fultz, do you think that teams are possibly taking into their consideration?
I think that's a fair question. The one concern with Fultz was obviously he was working out with his own personal trainer, and teams might wrangle that in a little bit more for the younger prospects. They might be like, no, you should work out with our guys. We have a whole training staff on board for you to help you develop the way we see best. And I would trust them over a personal trainer who you may have worked with before, but you don't have the expertise of working with NBA quality talent. So I see the injury concerns from an NBA level, and it's an investment. That's the thing, is you're investing millions of dollars in the future of your franchise, and for some of these guys, this could be their first or last decision as running this team. So, there's valid concerns about injuries for these young kids coming in, but I'm sorry, it's the NBA draft. Its potential outweighs everything else.
Yeah, I think ultimately Michael Porter Jr. will be able to work himself back into the discussion of number 1 overall pick. Will he be the number 1 overall pick? I probably don't think so.
I think somebody's going to get a bargain with him at like 5.
Yeah, I was iffy on him being the number 1 overall pick. I thought talent-wise he was the number 1 overall pick, but if people were saying Ayton was number 1 overall pick, Bamba, or Doncic, or even Bagley was the number 1 overall all in their mind, I wasn't really blaming them because we haven't seen anyone really pull themselves apart, or even you look at a guy Jaren Jackson out in Michigan State. He's having a fantastic season as well. Again, I wasn't really sold on any of these guys yet as the for sure number 1, like I was with Ben Simmons, like I was with Markelle Fultz. But I think Porter can definitely, with his talent, like we mentioned, he's heavily scouted. If he comes back healthy and has a great combine, people are going to see the athleticism. They're going to see the vert. They're going to see the speed. They're going to see his ability, at least as a natural athlete, to put the ball on the floor and attack the rim. And then also if he's able to, again, work on that shot while he's injured, while he's rehabbing, and then also hopefully as a playmaker once he finally steps onto the court in an NBA jersey. I think that's definitely going to help. One thing I do want to mention, though, I know there was some rumblings saying that Michael Porter wasn't even sure if he was going to come out after this year.
Yeah.
So this is definitely playing into my mind because he didn't get to play with his dad. Missouri hires his dad to be his coach, and now his dad is not able to coach his son because he gets injured right away. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's definitely going to be interesting and something to watch that Porter possibly, I think very, very slim, maybe like 3% chance of it happening, that Michael Porter stays. But it's out there.
It is.
It's out there, and some people have talked about it. So let us know what you think about Michael Porter Jr.'s draft stock in the comments down below. Do you think he is still a top 5 pick? Or are you agreeing with the Draft Express ESPN writer saying that he's now a mid-lottery pick? I think that's absolutely insane, especially what we've seen throughout his high school and under 18, and then also the 2 minutes of his college career. But let us know what you think about Michael Porter Jr. in the comments down below. This is probably going to be our last topic on him for a while since he won't be playing. So 3 straight weeks with Michael Porter topics, but this was probably going to be the last one. But anyways, Dave, we're moving on now to Kyrie Irving and talks of him being a possible MVP. 16 straight wins for the Celtics. They start the season 0-2, now 16 straight wins, and you look at Kyrie, obviously the big name acquisition for the Celtics in the offseason. There was always talk about Gordon Hayward going to the Celtics, but Kyrie going out trading for him was absolutely huge for Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics, a trade that we both loved. And looking at Kyrie so far, he just popped off for 47 points against Dallas. He had 48 straight points without a miss, dating back from that Hawks game into that Dallas game. He's been absolutely on fire. Best team right now in the Eastern Conference, best team in the league. They just got to win over the Warriors. Do you think Kyrie Irving can be the MVP this year?
I think he's put his name firmly in that conversation. I don't know if he can be, obviously this is unsustainable. In my mind, there's just no way that he can keep up at the pace that he's at, or the
I mean, right now he's only at 22.5 points per game. At least statistically, he can probably exceed what he's currently doing. But at least the Celtics.
It's the Celtics as a whole, and I think that's what does. If the Celtics are a team that gets up to 60, 65 wins, I think that enormously helps his case for MVP. I think their success is the bonus factor for what Kyrie could do, because you're right. Statistically, this season he's down from where he was last year. He's playing I don't want to say worse, but he's not playing as well from a stat line basis. And MVP is a lot. I mean, last year it was literally won by a stat line.
Yeah.
The triple-double won.
It was who's going to have the better stat line. Is it going to be James Harden or Russell Westbrook? And obviously, Russ averaging triple-double, that got him the win.
Absolutely. And he dragged his team kicking and screaming to the playoffs without talent. So that's the other thing. And this year, again, we see the very, very top of the MVP race. It looks like James Harden again. So you have a guy who we've seen Chris Paul obviously working his way back in. So his stat line we expected to drop a little. Hasn't yet, but it might, So I think Kyrie, honestly, he needs his team. He needs to help his team be successful to win MVP. If he can put up 25 and 25, 6, and 6, that could be an MVP this year. But the problem is there's so many unique talents in the NBA. It's team success is what's going to take his case over the top.
And looking at team success, obviously they are just absolutely succeeding off the page right now with 16 straight wins, but also defensively. As a whole, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kyrie Irving himself, Al Horford have all been absolutely fantastic. You look at defensive win shares, it's like six of the top 20 are all Boston Celtics. I mean, they are just absolutely dominating on that side. They held the Warriors to under 90 points. It was absolutely ridiculous what they're doing. I don't think Kyrie has a chance to win MVP. I know right now he is the best player.
Hot name.
He's a hot name, just scored 47. I don't think he has a chance, though, and it's not because of anything that he's doing, but you look at Boston, that's a team right now that's winning. It's not they're not winning because of a player. They're getting contributions from Al Horford, who's having a fantastic season right now. You're getting great contributions. We just talked about him last week. Jaylen Brown has been playing off the page. Jason Tatum has been fantastic as a rookie, and we're going to talk about him in the OT edition. Probably a top 3 rookie this year. And you look at every other player that's been able to step up, Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart. These guys are having fantastic seasons. I think it's just going to be so tough when people look at Kyrie. He won't have that sexy stat line, but then I also think people will realize Brad Stevens by far is coach of the year. And Kyrie Irving's having a great year, but I don't think it's all about this Boston mentality. It's not about one player. It's about the team. And I think that it's going to go more towards team success, and they're going to credit to every single player. And if they can give MVP to a whole team, Boston might win it. But Kyrie, I don't think will do enough in the end to get that ranking and get that honor of MVP. And it's not because I think his stat line's going to dip or anything. I think he can easily sustain 22 points per game, and at the efficiency he's doing, I think he's shooting for 46% right now. Kyrie can easily do that.
Yeah.
But I just think that ultimately Boston will not do enough to at least wow them, at least when it comes to the standings. I think the Cavs are going to be able to bounce back. I think the Warriors are obviously going to have a fantastic season. And then you're going to see a guy like James Harden obviously carry his team, or Russell Westbrook.
Or Giannis. We talked about him earlier.
Giannis as well. Giannis is obviously not hot right now, so it's something that he's not averaging what.
Well, that's early
on in the season was like the Anthony Davis thing last year, where he was averaging 40, 15, and 7 blocks. I mean, obviously Giannis has taken a step back, but Giannis,
they've also added in Eric Bledsoe, and they changed the dynamic of how that team works as well.
And Giannis obviously can always bounce back as well. So I mean, we look at all these players. Kawhi Leonard could also maybe Kawhi just starts taking the Spurs on a run
if he comes back
and has a great year. So I just think there's too much against Kyrie, and especially just with the way Boston is, I don't think he's able to get that name put into.
Well, it's funny because a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the Isaiah Thomas-less Celtics success, and was Kyrie to credit, and we unanimously decided no, it was Al Horford. It was the other guys stepping up. Yes, Kyrie was playing well, but he wasn't leading the team as well. He wasn't as critical to the team as Al Horford stepping up and being a leader of that team. So it's kind of funny that 2 weeks later we're here talking about Kyrie Irving because he's played so extremely well as of late. Being in the case for MVP, it's kind of funny that we've kind of made that transition. But I'm with you. I think that it's an outside shot, but you're right. It's entirely based off of will he continue to grow as a stat line, because that's 90% of what they're looking for.
And you also look at what people do off the ball, without the ball, on the other end defensively. Yeah. Al Horford's been a monster this year. I mean, he shutting down the opponent's big. He's been one of the best in the NBA. Obviously, we talked last year a ton about his inability to rebound, but again, as a team, rebounding, they've been absolutely fantastic. So I think just with the Boston Celtics, again, it's not about any one specific player. It's going to be about the whole team, and Kyrie's going to put up the most points probably. Al Horford, though, might mean more to this team. And if we're talking about most valuable players, that's the one thing is I think that Al Horford might possibly get that honor over Kyrie even when it comes to a team basis. So I think Kyrie, again, he's red hot so far, and if he takes another step where he's averaging 27, something like Isaiah Thomas was doing last year, and this is a team that, again, like you said, gets 65 wins, I think he could definitely become MVP. But now going away from Kyrie, who do you think can possibly be winning this MVP? Who's your, at least leading?
Right now, the runaway favorite is still it's still James Harden in my mind. Like, he's doing all and he's making it look easy, which is what kills me, because I thought the rule change for his bullshit fouls last year would have changed his game, would have maybe made him take a step back. Nah, he's out there playing and looks like carefree half the time. It's insane. And this is a team that added Chris Paul. I was like, oh, well, they're going to split duties. But because of his injury, we've seen James Harden continue to roll forward, be extremely efficient, kill it from the free throw line on a nightly basis. And just there's not a damn thing he doesn't do well except for, play defense all the time.
And one thing, this is a stat from ESPN, just going back to Kyrie. Yeah. He is probably the clutchest player in the NBA right now, shooting 61.5% in the clutch situations when the scoring differential is 5 points or less in the final 5 minutes. So Kyrie has been clutch, and that's obviously going to play into MVP voting. But I think I'd agree with you. James Harden right now has just been absolutely fantastic. He's been loading up the stat line. I think, again, when you look at it, it's probably going to be the stat line that wins it. And before we've seen it, where Statline hasn't won it, we've seen Kobe put up around like 35 and be beat out by Steve Nash. Same with Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq's been beaten out by Steve Nash, who probably had a better stat line. I just feel ultimately it's probably going to be a guy that not only makes the playoff with his team, it's going to be very similar to the Russ situation. Now he makes the playoffs with his team, but like a Giannis who's averaging 29, 10, and 4, or a James Harden who's averaging over 30 and ridiculous numbers as well. I think it's
39-5,
39-5. I think that's probably going to be the guy who ends up taking it. But let us know who you think is going to win the MVP down in the comments below. Do you think it's going to be Kyrie Irving? We know you Boston Celtics fans have flocked to this video and called us morons already. We love you so much.
Yeah, we do.
Let us know in the comments down below who you think is going to win the MVP. But anyways, let's move on now to our final topic. We're talking Kawhi Leonard and the San Antonio Spurs. Right now, the Spurs 11-6, 2 straight wins over the Thunder and the Hawks tonight. They're playing against the New Orleans Pelicans. And Dave, Kawhi Leonard, sources say that he's going to be back soonish.
Oh yeah, love that timetable.
Very professional. He's going to be back soonish, probably around Christmas at the latest.
We're hoping a little before, but yeah, I mean, it's pop. They're winning games. Like, why do you need to bring Kawhi Leonard back? Just let him rest till the playoffs.
Well, he's going to come back at some point. And looking at Kawhi Leonard, obviously last year was a candidate for MVP.
Yeah.
What do you think that Kawhi will bring to this team that's needed right now? Because right now, leading scorer is LaMarcus Aldridge, averaging 22 points per game. We know that Kawhi averaged last year his best performance, at least point per game wise, with 25.5. Obviously, a ridiculous defender with an under 100 defensive rating for his career. What do you think he's going to bring to this team that this team right now is lacking?
He brings back leadership. He brings back the go-to guy mentality. And he brings back an amazing quantity of defense. Being able to take out their number one player, no matter who it is, 1 through 5, you can put Kawhi Leonard on him, and you don't have to worry. Like, obviously, the Dwight Howard matchups, the Shaq level quality of bigs doesn't really, whatever. But everybody else, you don't have to worry. Kawhi Leonard is a shutdown defender still. So what it brings back is a huge winning mentality, having a leader on the court again. The thing that honestly concerns me is is this going to mean the disappearance of LaMarcus Aldridge again?
Well, right now he's being used 28.5% of the time, so that's going to obviously take a dip.
That's got to be like a top 10 usage.
But do you think that's going to at least, it's less than Dennis Smith, but do you think that that's going to play into, do you think they're going to try to at least use LaMarcus Aldridge a little bit more now, especially with the way that he's playing, when they bring in Kawhi, especially just kind of easing him into basketball? How do you think those two, at least back and forth, will do once that Kawhi is 100% healthy and going to take over the role that he usually has as the number one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be honestly a pretty big challenge, because Kawhi Leonard's not a super selfish player, which is awesome. But the problem is he is your best player by a long shot. Like, you need to feed him the ball, and I get it that LaMarcus Aldridge needs the setup time. He needs the sets offensively to run through him, so he gets comfortable and he starts to get a groove. So it's going to be a little tricky. The nice thing is you can really just have Kawhi be a primary, secondary ball handler out there, and he will 9 times out of 10 make the right decision. He's a very smart player. He knows the offense. He knows what Pop wants to do with his team. So I'm happy with the unselfishness. I'm concerned that they might go to LaMarcus even though it's not in their best interest when Kawhi is back.
And what do you think that at least means? So they're going to try to feed LaMarcus
They're going
Aldridge.
to try to force the ball through LaMarcus too much, and he's not your best player. You shouldn't be forcing the ball through your second best player, taking touches away from your best player.
And how do you think they can use at least those two skill sets of Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge together efficiently? Because obviously right now, I mean, we have kind of seen it worked out before. I mean, this is
But it's for
3
short
seasons?
stints.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is they've not been able to keep them both performing highly at the same time. So you see one take over than the other.
Do you think that at least LaMarcus being hot right now and Kawhi coming in, do you think it's better that LaMarcus is hot and Kawhi needs to get hot? Do you think that you know, LaMarcus with the kind of the way the NBA is now, going away from bigs, do you think the fact that LaMarcus is hot is going to help and possibly help him keep hot for longer?
Yeah, I do. I think that it's been a bonus to you that you've had LaMarcus turn back the clock to his performance of the old days when he was on, like the Trailblazers and being a dominant force. Obviously not filling the stat line is ridiculous, but he's on a much better team. There's a reason. I think that getting Kawhi ramped up, you will have that ability. You don't have to force feed, Kawhi the ball, so you can let him come back with a minutes restriction, play him for, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, build up his endurance, build up his conditioning again. And you still have LaMarcus Aldridge you can rely on at the end of the day, because he's a good scorer, he's still fairly efficient, and when he gets in his groove, he's very hard to stop. So it's really the question of, when we start hitting the end of the season and playoff time, will they have found a good balance with them both going 100% all the time?
And obviously, you want Kawhi to be the guy. If one of them's not 100%, you want it to be LaMarcus Aldridge.
Right.
You want Kawhi taking over.
We've seen what Kawhi can do.
We saw him last year in the playoffs, and obviously they were given Golden State hell when he was in the game, but also even in that Grizzlies game. I mean, there was 2 games, I believe both in Memphis, that he took over in the fourth quarter late. I think one of them went to overtime. Kawhi was absolutely ridiculous in those last minutes, and I think that's the thing is, you mentioned leadership. This is a guy in Kawhi Leonard, and again, the one worry of his injury with the quadricep is that it's going to be a chronic injury.
If it is.
And if it is, I mean, this is Kawhi Leonard. I was going to say LaMarcus Aldridge. This is Kawhi Leonard, who is having his best year last year, and we see him still growing as a scorer. The thing is that he's, if he's growing as a defender, he might be, Scottie Pippen level, one of the greatest defenders of all time, if he's still growing as a defender. But at least scoring-wise is where we obviously needed to see him take a growth. You needed to see him be more of a playmaker. You needed to see him hit more of his shots and create more of his shots. He obviously did that last year. With the quadricep injury, what are you expecting from Kawhi out of the gate? Do you expect him to be Kawhi out of the gate? Because he is a robot.
He is. He has no emotions. He just works. It's like an on-off switch with Kawhi Leonard. I don't expect to see a whole lot of problem with him. I think he's still probably in decent enough basketball shape. The worry for me is, it's going to sound stupid, because I know the Spurs have one of the best organizations, best trainers, best staff, best everything. So my concern is his conditioning out of the gate. It's how well will he transition back into, playing more than 20 minutes a night at the NBA level. Will it take him the first month to get back up to speed? Because a quad injury, you have to get back to trusting yourself first off, which is a big step. And we've seen players in the past have issues where, they sort of trust it, but their game changes because of the injury, which I'm hoping it doesn't have to.
Well, you also expect and kind of wonder what his mentality and his reaction is going to be when guys start to close out on him like Zaza did.
No, and that's true. That's true. I mean, there's a whole mental aspect. I know I was reading the whole thing about like Derrick Rose and like how he's had to change and adapt his game because of his injuries, and you have to worry mentally for the player and what happens in those situations. I think that's a fair concern, and the upside is it's still Kawhi Leonard. Like, there's that thought in the back of head, he'll be fine. Like you said, he's a robot. Like he'll come back 100% same as he was before, and that's what you have to hope for as a Spurs fan. And
are you okay with him taking a dip statistically if it just means he's healthy out there? Because last year, one of the best players in the NBA, like we said, 25 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists per game, 1.8, near 2 steals per game, near a block a game, shooting 48% from the field, and also 38% from 3 in 34.3 minutes. So do you think that stat line is going to take a dip, not only minute-wise, but also just efficiency-wise, just because he's obviously going to be out to a slow start to go right away?
I would expect it to take a dip. The big thing is, like I said, don't push him out there before he's not ready. This is a Spurs team that is still 11-6. You're still the 3rd best record in the West. Like, there is no need to rush. And the other thing is that we haven't even talked about, Tony Parker, the leader, emotional leader of this team, is going to be coming back roughly the same time frame, it looks like. So you're going to get back not only Kawhi Leonard, one of the best two-way players, and a top 5 candidate for player in the NBA, but also Tony Parker, a guy who's been there, done that, led teams, and has been clutch.
Well, and right now, Manu Ginobili is being used the 3rd highest amount on that team.
Bar soap.
He's 40 years old, so that's going to take a break off Manu. That's going to take a break off LaMarcus, bringing in Tony Parker. I'm obviously going to be worried, too, about Tony Parker because that was a pretty nasty injury that he suffered in the playoffs as well. But looking at the Spurs schedule and when he possibly can come back, I would probably look at that Saturday, December 9th date where they're going to be at Phoenix or at Dallas. They go Phoenix and then to Dallas back-to-back. I think that might be a
nice cushy return.
I think that's going to be a place. Or if they want to keep it easy schedule-wise, Tuesday, December 12th, that's at Dallas, then at Houston. That's going to be a tough game, but then they go back to Dallas. So that's not too bad of a trip. And then you play at home against LA. So that's 4 games in the state of Texas. I wouldn't be shocked if that's when they bring back Kawhi Leonard. What are your expectations for the Spurs team once they add back possible MVP candidate Kawhi Leonard and then also Tony Parker? Where do you think this team can really push themselves? Because right now they're 3rd in the West Conference.
I think they're the Spurs. They're still going to be a top 3 team in the West. I don't think they drop off. Obviously, they're not going to drop off by adding back talent, but I don't know that they have enough to push ahead of a team like the Warriors or the Rockets because, to be honest, the Rockets have been doing it without Chris Paul.
Yeah.
And that's even more of a stab. So I'm a little concerned that they're kind of stuck in that awful position of we're a great team, we're consistently great, but you don't necessarily have enough to beat out the Warriors or the Rockets. But the big thing is it doesn't matter for the regular season. You can go into the playoffs as the 3rd seed. This is a team that if they have their health lines time up where everybody's healthy, everybody is back to 100% minutes, and they're all feeling it come playoff time, I don't want to face them in a series. Are you kidding me?
And the thing is, too, I mean, you got to look at Spurs fans, and they're definitely wondering, well, what if? What if Kawhi Leonard was healthy? What if Kawhi Leonard, we got 7 games
we talked about that
against
for
the
months.
Warriors, and he was healthy, you possibly knock off the Warriors, and you're possibly going up against the Cavs against the finals. Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously a lot of what ifs there. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're probably going to cement themselves as the 2 seed in the Western Conference. The Rockets, I think, are going to fall below them. I think the Warriors are obviously going to take over as the number 1 seed. I think we're probably looking at a Warriors, Spurs, Rockets. But then again, Rockets versus the Spurs in the second round, hell yeah. Sign me up for that. It's going to be fun.
That's the thing. As long as they're all happy and healthy for the playoffs, that's what we want to see. I want a series, and I want to be a full series. I honestly want that Spurs-Warriors rematch so bad.
Yeah, it should be fun. Let us know what you think Kawhi Leonard brings back to the Spurs. Obviously, he's bringing a top-level talent, one of the best players in the NBA, and we're glad that Kawhi Leonard's going to be back. But let us know what you think is going to happen when the Spurs come back. Or not when the Spurs come back, when Kawhi Leonard comes back to the Spurs at the end of this one. But that's going to wrap up this podcast. Check out the Fast Break OT edition. David and I are going to give our power rankings for the NBA rookies so far. We're pretty much a quarter way through the NBA season, so check that out on our YouTube page. If you're listening on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating to the Onside Kick, Primetime Podcast, Fast Break Podcast, and Rick and Johnny. You're doing a great job if you do that. We love you so much, and we appreciate you a ton. Also, patreon.com/mostofitall podcast. Check out that $10 tier. It's pretty damn sweet. We're going to have Jake on next week to talk NBA with us because he's a part of that $10 tier. It's super fun, but also you get some pretty cool stuff at the $1 tier, $2 tier, and $5 tier. So definitely check that out if you are interested. Patreon.com/mostofitall podcast. Also, if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, big shout out to you. And also, happy Thanksgiving. I don't know.
It's probably after Thanksgiving.
It's probably Black Friday. Happy Thanksgiving anyways. I didn't do it at the end of the start of the podcast. I didn't do it at the end of the podcast. Well, if people are listening on Blog Talk Radio, they get a happy Thanksgiving.
They'll still hear it.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We love you so much. But for Dave Oster, I'm Sean Anderson. We'll see you next time.